I know a fair amount about nutrition, so I don't need to educate myself on the subject, but I know that there's quite a bit that you guys maybe want to know. I am a firm believer, it has to be said, that we actually know what we need to know about nutrition, but we just don't do it half the time. Yes, everyone's nodding straight away. So a lot of the questions I get asked, I'm going to ask you what you think the answers are, and I'm sure within the room you know what the answers are, so we'll kind of try and prove that theory tonight, really. Yeah, having said that, there is a lot of information out there that can be a bit conflicting, and hopefully tonight will help resolve that. So I'm going to go over the kind of basics of nutrition as I see it and try and defuzz it, and then I've got the list of questions on here that came to me from you guys, and we're going to work through those as well. A lot of them I think are answered in the first part of the basics of anyway, so I think the first part will answer a lot of them. But for anything that's left, we'll go through those separately. If you can, as well, at some point, Amanda kindly bought the Joshua Tree bucket, so remember we are collecting for the Joshua Tree for tonight as well, so if you pop your monies in there, that'd be fab. And yeah, I suppose the other thing to going back on my comment of, I think you all know what to do. If you are wanting to change your nutrition, most of it is up here, and not in terms of knowledge, but in your desire to change. Okay, so I speak to people a lot, and I hear a lot of focus on the I can'ts, and I need to do this and I want to do this, but I can't do that. A focus on the problem rather than a focus on the solution. Okay, so if you really want to change your nutrition for the better, you need to have the attitude, yes, there's a recognition that there's a problem, as in you're finding something challenging to do, and then the next point that you need to move to quite quickly is, what can I do about that? And it doesn't mean, I heard someone, it wasn't you, I'm looking at you because she looks similar to you, but it's a lady called Louise said to me today, she's got chronic rheumatoid arthritis, which is a chronic condition that's very inflammatory, and you can help it again with diet. She knows she doesn't need to adopt a paleo diet, but she's got it in her head she needs to adopt a paleo diet. And she said to me, I know I need to do paleo, but I don't want to make all that bone broth and stuff. And people think that you're in this position here, and you've got to jump to this, doing everything in the extreme, and you really don't. You need to make small, sustainable changes, and every day think, what can I do today that's a little bit better than what I did yesterday? And build on that, and build on that. Yeah, you don't make a house in a day, do you? You build it brick by brick, and building up sound nutrition is no different. So when you have that, oh, I can't resist jumping into the biscuit jar, or I can't resist having a glass of wine when I get home at the end of the night, think to yourself, flip it and say, what can I do? What one step can you do to make what you're doing now better than what it was yesterday? Yeah, so you have to have that mindset, anything in life really, but you have to have that mindset if you really want to change. Focusing on the problem will get you nowhere, so think about what you can do to create a solution. Right, are we recording, by the way? Thank you. Just realised that. There's a lot of people that can't make it, that I promised to record it for, so that they can watch it in their own time. So nutrition advice comes in buzzwords and slogans. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard that. Some of these type things like, just eat whole foods, or only eat what your grandmother would recognise, eat fat and fewer carbs, and if it doesn't run, fly or swim, I use that quite a lot, then don't eat it. But it's very easy to kind of summarise good nutrition in a few words like that, but it's a lot more difficult to put it into, as we've said, something that you're actually going to do. So that's what the aim of this is, to try and give you some steps of what you actually need to do. And we're going to look at that in 3 steps. This first section is about identifying 3 major steps that you can take to improve your nutrition. So this is the quote that's the quote from Louise. I don't want to try paleo because I have to make bone broth and stuff. You don't to adopt a paleo type diet. And this is another thing, so I have to cut out sugar and dairy and carbs, and need to eat saturated fat and more protein and healthy fats, and then you just go, sod this. It's far too radically different from what I'm doing now, so I'm not going to do anything. Okay? Hello. Sorry. That's all right. Okay, so because that is exhausting, one of the first steps we look at is addressing nutritional deficiencies at the first point. Because if you're nutritionally deficient, which I would suggest the majority of you in the room are, you probably feel pretty lousy to begin with. And if you feel pretty lousy to begin with, the thought of changing something and putting a load of effort into a new lifestyle, it just leaves you with that I can't be bothered attitude, okay? So you struggle with how you look and feel because your physiology isn't working the way it should. Your body isn't working how it's designed to work because you're not giving it the raw materials it needs to function properly, yeah? Simple as that. You can get hormonal imbalances as well, which can be separate to dietary issues, but you often find that dietary imbalances exaggerate the hormone imbalances, so you've got the two working in tandem together. So if you support yourself from a dietary perspective, then the hormone balances will help even out anyway. Not necessarily completely, but it will certainly push them in the right direction. But you could be suffering from both. Dietary deficiencies are the first red flag that something is wrong. Okay. So you've got two major contributors to dietary deficiencies. One is that many of us don't eat the right stuff in the first place, yeah? So anyone in this room got an A1 perfect, 100% wonderful, spot-on diet? No? Right, so for a start, because we're not eating clean, as we like to call it, which is another term I'm not a big fan of, 100% of the time, we know that we're not getting everything we need from the food. But the second part is, these days, and this is quite sad really, but it's a fact, it's exceedingly hard to get all the vitamins and minerals you can from your diet, even if you're eating absolutely perfectly. And that's simply due to the fact that all of the produce, the animals that we eat, the vegetables in the ground that are produced are over-farmed these days. And the vegetables that are coming out of the ground can only have the nutrients that the ground contains. And the ground is so over-farmed that the nutrients can't come up into the plants. So like a broccoli now would have X amount of vitamin C in it. 10 years ago, 50 years ago, it would have a hell of a lot more. So you've got to eat a lot more of this stuff in order to get the vitamins and minerals that you need. Magnesium is a huge one that many people are now deficient in, because magnesium is a major mineral that comes from the soil that is then contained within the plants. So it's very easy to be deficient in magnesium. So even with the best diet in the world, you're likely to have deficiencies of some sort. There are things we can do to help that. We can go for organic food where possible, because that tends to be less over-farmed. You're going to have a richer soil for the plants for the vegetables to absorb the vitamins and minerals from. But you're not going to be able to cover all bases just from doing that, even that on its own. So, yeah. Like I've said in all this, that's something I need to tell you actually. All of the stuff that I promote from a nutritional perspective is research based, okay? I'm a big fan, because I'm a science background, my degree is in biology, very kind of science orientated. I want to see if someone tells me something is a certain way, I want to understand how that is so, okay? So the stuff that I'm telling you has got a lot of research to kind of support it, and if anyone's interested in geeking out on any of that research, just let me know and I can send you papers to read, but I'm assuming not at this stage. I'm assuming you just want to know kind of what to do. But ultimately, the bottom line on this is dietary deficiencies are very common, and the chances are, like I said earlier, most of you in this room will have at least one. Okay. The most common deficiencies, and if you look at different populations, for a starter is water. So many people simply don't drink enough water. You should be drinking, there was an easy calculation for this, what was it? Can't remember it now. It's between 2 and 3 litres, but you can associate it with your body weight. And there used to be a really complicated one. I picked up a really easy one the other day, like you can convert your pounds into something. But you know, if you're not drinking at least 2 litres, you're way off. Some of you will need to be north of 3. Okay, and water, if you think about it, we're like 60% water. So much of our body, every single cell in your body needs water to it. Any of you not drunk enough water and then try drinking more water and notice your energy levels just go up instantly, yeah? And then you go off track again and you forget because you do, and then suddenly you feel tired again. one of the biggest ways you can increase your energy straight away is to just drink more. So a hell of a lot of us don't drink enough for a start. On that note, quite a few people drink green tea as a weight loss aid, which is fine, but it does have caffeine in it. Just be aware that anything with caffeine in it then tends to be a, what's the word?
Diuretic.
Diuretic, thank you. Lost the word for a second. So it won't hydrate you. So green tea is fine, but if you're wanting a hydrating drink other than water, you want herbal teas. They're naturally caffeine free. I drink the Neal's Yard lot. I drink all the time. The nighttime, the calming, the echinacea, the detox. There's tons of them, and they all have like lime flower and loads of different herbs in. They're really, really nice, and they're just as hydrating as drinking water, but they're infused with herbs. So if you're wanting something, because I know a lot of people don't like plain water, or you can chuck chunks of cucumbers and strawberries and fruit infused in water as well can help, just to make it a little bit different. But don't be thinking that cups of regular tea and coffee are hydrating you, because they're just not, because as you say, they're diuretics. Okay, then we've got vitamins and minerals, and there are a plethora of vitamins and minerals that we can be deficient in, but most often magnesium, like I said earlier, especially if you suffer from, and B-vits as well, if you suffer from stress. So if you are stressed at any point in your life, your magnesium and your B vitamins are going to be zapped up. So as well as not being able to get enough in your diet, the stress that means they're being used up a lot more quickly. Zinc, vitamins D, E, B complex, and calcium. So there's quite a few there. Protein, particularly in women, and actually in men with a low appetite, but as I'm not talking to any men, just sort of mention that. But for you guys, it's quite common for women to not eat enough protein. And I've done a blog on this. I don't know how many of you read it or watched it, but there are a lot of essential amino acids. A lot of essential amino acids in proteins. That mean when the word essential is used, your body cannot make them. The only way it can get them is to take them in through your diet. So if you're not eating enough protein, you're not eating a good range of protein, again, you're not giving your body what it needs to function in the first place. And proteins are needed to make hormones. So you're talking of hormone imbalances, your body is not being given the building blocks to make the hormones it needs to function properly. It's needed for a million other things as well. And essential fatty acids, again, that word essential, your body can't make them. There are a lot of fatty acids your body can make from building blocks you eat, but essential ones it can't. So we have to get those through the diet. We'll talk about them a little bit later. Okay. So the only way to 100% identify which deficiency specifically you have is to have a blood sample taken, okay? So I don't even know if the NHS offer this. I doubt they do. You could probably go and have one done privately, but there are nutrition clinics that would do a blood profile for you. You can have all the vitamins and mineral levels in your blood tested to see if you are deficient in anything. That's the only 100% way of knowing that is the case. If you don't want to do that, which I don't, and a lot of other people don't, unless there's a specific health concern that you're worried about, that you think, I could get this tested just to see if there's something that I'm particularly low in. What you can do to address these points that we've said here is eat more protein-rich foods. Okay, we'll talk about how much of kind of protein you need. Drink more hydrating fluids, so that's your water and your herbal teas and things. Take in more essential fats, and I've brought a few things to show you what I have every day, because I bang on about this all the time. This is omega-3 that Jo's just started taking. She loves it. She wants to drink the whole bottle in one go because it's so tasty.
It makes you feel safe afterwards.
Yeah, Eva's got it as well. Eva has the capsules now. This is the liquid form. It doesn't taste of anything nasty. It's lime flavoured, but it's omega-3. And omega-3, we'll talk about later,
Fish line.
is something that is way out of balance in our Western world diet completely against omega-6, which is the other essential amino acid, one other essential amino acid you need. But 1 teaspoon of that a day will send my omega-3s up. So even when I'm eating omega-6s the rest of the day, I've got my omega-6 quota, 1 teaspoon a day. So just showing you there are easy ways to do this. I mean, I eat salmon, and walnuts are a good source. I have a handful of walnuts in my porridge and stuff like that. So there are other sources of omega-3s as well. But if I take that every day, that's kind of my tick box, got that, I need that. If you want any research on the benefits of omega-3s, it's insane the amount of benefits that there are to taking omega-3s, from cognitive function to hormone balance to vision, so many different cardiovascular protection. There are tons. So I just think anyone who's not taking it is bonkers. That's just my personal belief. And then eat more foods.
Anymore.
What's that?
Not bonkers anymore.
Yeah, you just don't like the taste, do you? Eat more foods rich in the vitamins and minerals and supplement smartly. And like I said before, you can have tons of veggies and salads and things, and I will advocate that in a minute. And I'm not saying for a second that supplements outweigh a balanced diet. You need to do the two together. But again, these are some of the things I take. So there's a women's multi in there, which is just a pink tablet. It's got majority of stuff in it. Magnesium is such a bulk mineral that you can't get enough magnesium in there without having a tablet that's the size of a flipping horse pessary or something. So I take magnesium separately. And then starflower, which is an omega-6, and extra vitamin C. And then in the winter I have vitamin D as well. So yeah, it's a little collection, but that kind of is my, rather than doing having a blood test every 6 months to see where where everything's at, that's my like self-made insurance policy. That yes, my diet is pretty good, but it's not perfect. You guys think I can eat chicken and broccoli all day. I really don't. My diet is pretty decent, but it's not perfect because I have social outings just as everybody else does. But that's like my insurance policy to think, well, okay, but at least I've got my magnesium, at least I've got my omega-3s, at least I've got my, whatever else, it's all topped up.
So Karen, because obviously you've got certain ones there.
Yeah.
And I don't expect you to know every supermarkets and all that sort of stuff, but just the general ones that you can buy in supermarkets.
Are they crap?
Are they crap?
Yeah, pretty much, I would say. I use these, and I'm a practitioner for Nutri, because they're bloody good.
Right.
And most importantly for me, the people at the end of the phone, when I need to speak to them about you guys and your individual needs and quirks and things, know a hell of a lot. So they've got technical advice. You can say, okay, well, what, are they on any drugs? Are they on any? Because quite often I get clients coming to me with a whole host of conditions that they're on a lot of drugs for, but they also want nutritional support to try and get them off the drugs. And these guys will tell me all the contraindications and things. A lot of the things you get from supermarkets, the main thing to know with supplements is you can do a vitamin B complex, and you can make about 5 or 6 different forms of it. And quite often the cheaper forms are the ones that are less bioavailable, which means they're less easily absorbed by your body. So you can have the same amount of vitamin B6, for example, but in one form most of it will end up being absorbed and go into your bloodstream, and in a cheaper form most of it will just come out through your pee or whatever. So I go for these guys because, again, they're research based. They've got lots of clinical trials on their supplements to prove that the stuff works, and they choose more expensive forms of the vitamins, but forms that they know actually end up in your body. So I would never go to Tesco's or Boots or anywhere like that to get supplements. I've used these guys through recommendations of colleagues I've worked with, and still stick with them. NSP I use for a bit, but mainly Nutri. Okay.
And are these things that you can't overdose on? So if you haven't had the blood test and you are okay on certain things?
Oh, blimey. Some you can. So there are water-soluble vitamins and fat-soluble vitamins. Water-soluble vitamins you can't overdose on because you'll just excrete what your body doesn't use. Fat-soluble ones you can, but the doses that are given as guidelines, you wouldn't be, unless you're eating, a ridiculous amount of one food type, it would be exceedingly hard to overdose on it. Okay. So, without any advanced screening or dietary changes, you'll start to feel better as soon as you remove the nutritional deficiencies, okay? So that's really important to understand. That's why it's your step one. Because remember, we're wanting to make changes to your lifestyle here, and if you feel lousy in the first place, you're going to have no motivation to do that. So trying to get you feeling a little bit better in the first place, and without any other dietary changes, that should start to make you feel better. Your ability to lose fat and gain muscle, because your physiology is stronger, is improved as well. Like I say, just generally feel more motivated. So that's the power of removing nutrient deficiencies. When our bodies don't have the nutrients they need to work, we suffer, but when we get them, they thrive. And like I said before, I am not advocating, if someone came to me and said, yeah, I'll have a load of these, I'm going to carry on eating McDonald's for the rest of my life, but I'll take these with it. It doesn't work like that. You need to do the two in conjunction. I say this is just an insurance policy to kind of fill the gaps in that they're likely to be in anybody's diet. Okay, so any questions on step one? No? Okay, step 2, adjusting the food amount and food type. So once you're getting all the raw materials, and we'll come back to that in a minute in terms of your micronutrients, you move on to bigger issues, and they are the food amount, which is literally the quantity of food you're eating, and we call that calorie intake, for want of a better word, and food composition. So that's your macronutrient breakdown. That's your protein, fats, and carbohydrates largely. So, food amount, and a lot of people then at that point turn to calorie counting. I think, am I right in assuming that calorie counting is becoming a bit less popular these days? Or does anyone think it's still as popular as it was? Does anyone calorie count?
My fitness pal I have used, and that's calories.
Yeah. I know Weight Watchers do points or sins or something like that, don't they?
But it's,
Fine.
it's still heavily based on calories.
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
50 calories is
And
a point or a
Fitness
sin
Pal
or
and all that
something.
sort of stuff, it's all based on calories,
Yeah.
you know.
But it doesn't, but vegetables and fruit have no points. So it's not quite
Yeah,
calories because
yeah.
they
Right,
have
okay.
calories. But it's saying just as much as you can eat and
Of certain things.
Of certain things.
Okay. Now, I've got a big issue with calorie count, coming from someone who suffered from eating disorders as well, yeah? Because I used to be bulimic when I was in my 30s. Yeah, seems like a long time ago now. But suffered from binge eating without the purging, so I got very big and I was overweight, and then binge eating with the purging, so I went really tiny. So I've been both extremes. I feel like I'm quite versed to talk about this kind of thing. But calorie counting can lead to an obsessive disorder. So you start to count your calories and you become obsessive, and everything you want to know how many calories is in it. So that's one concern about it. And I think if you've counted calories at any point in your life, you never see an item of food without a number associated to it. Yeah, there's a few people nodding at that point. Calorie counting does nothing to help you tune into your own natural hunger and appetite. The more you count calories in foods, the more you lose the ability to listen to your own cues of whether you're hungry or not. And you tend to eat for other reasons other than hunger, which is where we tend to get into a bit of a mess that we're in. By learning to listen to your body, you have a much more long-term success with managing healthy food and healthy eating. It also doesn't help balance your health goal with your natural enjoyment of food. Because like I said, if you're going out for a social engagement, you're looking at food thinking, oh, I really want that, but I should have that because I've got less calories in. And food should be enjoyed, it should be part of it is part of our social culture. And calorie counting doesn't really fall in line with that. In short term, anyone can turn into a numerical and robotic exercise, but in the long run, it's not really sustainable. And really importantly, and I think this is what a lot of people fail to understand, it's really bloody inaccurate in the first place. So the labelling system that is on the foods, I used to work in a lab years ago. My first job after university was working in a chemistry lab and a biology lab, analysing foods. Biology lab was for Listeria, Salmonella, that kind of thing. The chemistry lab was analysing this kind of protein, fat and calorie content of foods. And oh my God, some of the results we sent out, I tell you, there were errors left, right and centre. So don't think for a second that these nutrition labels you have on your food are accurate. There's also, you look at a tomato when it's ripe and a tomato when it's out of season, and the energy content of that tomato will be radically different. So you've got seasonal differences as well. And you know, they've looked at some of the evidence shows that the calorie values of food are out by as much as 25%. So you've got this number that you're planning your diet around, and it's way off what it should be anyway. Plus, we're given this number of calories that we need as an individual, but there's me as a 8.5 stone, 5'3" person. There could be another 8.5 stone, 5'3" person stood next to me, but we've got totally different metabolic rates. So this difference of calories in and out in the foods is also very different in individuals. So the numbers game, for lots of different reasons, really doesn't work particularly well. So if we don't count calories, what's the alternative? And the best alternative I've found to date, when you're wanting to lose weight and you're wanting to manage your weight healthily, especially to begin with, because you need some kind of guide, is to use your hand, because it's a portable tool and you don't need to carry a calculator around with you. So you use your hand, because generally the bigger the body, the bigger the hand, as a rule. You might find a little person with great big spades who won't work out that well. But generally it gives, like a man will have bigger hands than a woman, for example, and a man needs obviously to have more food than a woman. But by looking at different aspects, so a fist size of something or a palm size of something or a cup full of something, gives you a good guide, and it is only a guide, and we'll see that later, of roughly what you should be eating for the right kind of amount for you. So we're looking at a palm size amount of protein dense foods, and we'll come into what they are later. A fist of vegetables, this is again just a guide for women. A cupped handful of carb dense food, and then a thumbful of fats, just to give you an idea. And it says at most meals. Now if you're putting a shepherd's pie together, for example, it's going to be very difficult for you to kind of look at how much. But the main thing to do when you're looking at that is when you get the ingredients out, when you make it in the first place, have a look at what you've got there. Can you see plenty of protein? Divide that up, that pack of mince between the four of you. Does it look like roughly a palm size? Or at least check you've got protein in the meal. You know, the carbohydrates, you're putting a potato topping on a shepherd's pie that's that thick, is probably going to be a little bit more than a handful of cupped, carbs at the end of the meal when you eat it. And a fistful of vegetables, have you got loads of vegetables in with the mincemeat, or are you just literally using protein and mincemeat and potatoes? So again, it's a guide, it's a starting point, but it should give you an idea. But when you've got like a salad, or I don't know, if you're a meat and two veg type person, it's very easy to see that on a plate. Okay, so by addressing the nutritional deficiencies and the food amount are the first two steps, but there's a really important other aspect that takes into account the fact that we're all as different on the inside as we are on the outside. I said about that 5'3" person standing here and there that can be quite different. And this is looking at your food type, so it's looking at your macronutrient balance, because what works for Lourdes, for example, might be very different to what works for me, what works for Bar, what works for Joe. We're not all the same internally, just as we're not externally. And for this food type, we split people roughly into three categories: I types, V types, and O types. And that's what the three types look like. So you'll get this description in a minute, in a bit more detail.
And so are we.
Just like you were all gorgeous. So your I type is kind of your Paula Radcliffe type frame, where she could eat carbohydrates all day long, even if she wasn't running probably, and she just wouldn't put much weight on. So she's very lean naturally, got slight limbs, slight joints, small frame, that type of generally. I'd class Barb as a kind of I type if I was classing someone as an I type. Yes, yeah, because you're very slight, naturally very slight person. Then you've got a V type, who is, now I would class, for those of you who know her, someone like Jo Ingham as a V type. And a V type is somebody who's a bit more muscular, so they put muscle on quite easily. I would imagine Barb would struggle to put muscle on, for example, but still relatively lean, yeah, but more of a powerhouse than the I type, which is more for the same endurance running. You'll get different descriptions in a moment. O types are the types that tend to be more curvy, and if they aren't very active, more sedentary, then they will tend to put weight on quite easily and tend to not tolerate carbs so easily. Okay. Bear in mind as well, we can change our type as we go through our life, and as our hormones are changing as we get older. So just because you're an I type in your 20s, you're not necessarily an I type in your 40s, say, for example. Okay, so I types. This is the description I was trying to give you. So thin with smaller bone structures and thinner limbs, typically an endurance athlete, hence my Paula Radcliffe analogy. They have a few key features that affect their response to food. So the engine is set to high revving. They typically have naturally a fast metabolic rate. They're often fidgeters and pacers, so you don't see them sat down for, I think I'm a cross probably between an I and a middle one, a V. I don't tend to sit still for very length of time. So even if I'm working with my computer, my legs and then it's down and then I'm up and then I'm, so you're constantly moving around. That's just the general type of person you are. You tolerate carbs well, so you can eat, this is a rare folks that can eat cookies without impunity. So they can sit there and eat carbs all day long, really. It doesn't really have much of an effect on them. I'm not a pure I type, I'll tell you that, but I'm a mixture, and that comes to that later. A lot of us are a mixture. So I types therefore generally do best with more carbohydrates in their diet. And what you'll find is we all need protein. I think I made that clear in the first section.